Or Alex Rowley, who again joins us remotely.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what action it is taken to encourage the uptake of science subjects by secondary school pupils.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government's STEM education and training strategy has set out a range of actions to encourage uptake of science subjects in Scotland's secondary schools. We have invested in a range of measures to develop the capacity of teachers and school leaders to develop inspiring STEM courses and include measures to address the gender imbalance in STEM subjects. Among other initiatives, we support the delivery of science subjects through the school journey through teacher professional development provided by CERC and also through RAISE. CERC also deliver the Young STEM Leader Awards programme, which aims to inspire and reward young people to take up STEM subjects and to encourage their peers to do so.
Alex Rowley.
I thank the Minister for that answer. It's clear that the strategy is not working in either your constituency or in mine. In Fife, for example, a total of 1,166 fewer pupils in S4 studied chemistry, biology or physics across the region this year than the year before. So there is clearly a problem there. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, do we know what the impact of COVID has been on our schools, local authority by local authority? Has there been a proper impact assessment? And is local authorities being asked to produce the detail of that and set out a clear recovery plan for education in the region?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I would point Mr Rowley to the work that will be undertaken with the Scottish Attainment Challenge refresh that particularly ensures that we are investing that £1 billion from the Scottish Government across all 32 local authorities, including Fife for the first time, and also a number of schools in Mr Rowley's constituency and region. That's very, very important because we need to look, of course, at the impact of COVID and the impact of poverty. The other part of the work that I announced in my ministerial statement on the refresh was the work that we'd be undertaking with local authorities to include stretch aims about how we could improve what is happening in the different local authorities, including Fife, and that work will be available in the new year and, of course, published for Mr Rowley to comment on.
Got a number of supplementaries. First, Ariane Burgess.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how they are engaging secondary school pupils in the new draft National Planning Framework as a way of sparking interest in this topic and meeting the national skills shortage?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, what happens within schools is a matter for schools and teachers themselves. We do not have a set national curriculum in Scotland. I'm sure that teachers will be seeing the importance of what happens in this area and will be encouraging their pupils to take that up. But that is, of course, a matter for teachers themselves.
And further supplementary, Megan Gallagher, who joins us remotely.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Reports from the Scottish Qualifications Authority shows that in 2020, young women only make up 28% of higher physics students and 24% of advanced higher physics students. These statistics are the same as to when the SNP came to power in 2007. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that it is vital that young women must be encouraged to study STEM subjects in school? And will she commit to ensuring that the next generation of women feel empowered to pursue STEM careers and continue to close the gender gap?
Well, I'm not making another hour-long video. Every time I say that, I end up doing it. But no, it's just, I just made a video talking about outcomes and representation, etc. And this is pretty much more of the same bullshit. Feminist edition, of course, when we talk about STEM. Always obsessing over STEM. And they can't seem to grasp the concept that boys and girls, men and women, are actually different. They choose different things on average. Men or boys predominantly choose STEM subjects as opposed to females. And they can't seem to grasp the concept that that is due to difference, and instead believe wholeheartedly that it is systemic stereotypes, the usual bullshit, gender inequality. Fundamentally, just take a step back for a brief second. First and foremost, as pretty as this girl is, I'm pretty disappointed that she's coming away with bullshit like this, I have to be honest. But she's supposed to be a Tory, and even she's parting feminist shite. Why is it an issue if girls ain't taking physics? Why is that an issue? If they're not taking physics, they're taking something in its place. If they're content with what they're taking in place of physics, why is that an issue? Why do things need to appear equal on paper in order to reduce these so-called gender gaps? Gender gaps only seem to be an issue when it's subjects or fields that could be beneficial to women or girls, that are dominated by boys. You don't really hear them complaining about other aspects of society that are dominated by women if it pays well, etc. But we could make the argument about the teaching profession. That's heavily dominated by women. And look what the fuck's happening. We've got a feminist-inspired education. As the feminist bulldog Shirley Ann Somerville somewhat alludes to a little bit, in regards to gender stereotypes and the need to eradicate them, and goes on to reference nurseries. Yeah, beautiful times ahead in Scotland. But just what? Girls, females need to feel empowered to pursue STEM. What the fuck? What relevance does that have to your life? Why does this need to be something that they need to tackle? Why is so much time and money being invested into tackling this so-called issue? It's just ridiculous nonsense. Yet another excuse, as far as I'm concerned, to justify the continual erosion of so-called gender stereotypes, aka, God forbid you assume that a girl is a girl and a boy is a boy.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I would very much agree with the premise of that question and the importance of tackling that gender gap that we do have. I would point the member to the STEM strategy, which includes a number of policy initiatives, particularly through Education Scotland, to ensure that this is being something that's being tackled. The STEM strategy also looks very carefully at what we do need to do exactly from early years all the way through, because unfortunately some of the gender stereotypes when it comes either to STEM or to caring are already well set in train when people are...
See that? STEM or caring. Because they always complain that women that are in the caring profession, healthcare, etc., caring for elderly people or whatever it may be, doesn't pay very well, but the STEM subjects tend to do pay well, maths and whatnot. Physics, go on to become a professor or whatever it will be, and you might end up earning a hefty paycheck. And they're not happy that the women ain't taking that up. The life of a feminist, though. But gender stereotypes are responsible for this, and they're set by the time children are at nursery. Oh, well, if that is really the case, then all the more reason to infiltrate said nurseries and ensure that that is no longer a problem. Am I right? Of course I'm right. Because that's the S&P over the back. Fucking unreal. This is what happens when feminism goes completely unchecked in a society. It's fucking abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. They just obsess over trying everything in their power to supposedly empower girls and eradicate gender inequality that doesn't exist. The only proof that they have that it does exist is disparities. That's it. Fucking disparities. But they pick and choose which disparities to point to.
When young people are already at nursery. So we're very determined to take that on at all levels.
At all levels? Nursery? At all levels? Aye, aye.
I would encourage her, if she has any specific ways that the government could be doing more than this, I'd be more than happy to work with her in the new year on that.
And a final supplementary from Emma Harper.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. It's kind of a similar question, but it's to ask the Scottish Government what steps it's taken to further encourage women, because it's not just about school, it's even at college or further education, to encourage women to have careers in STEM.
Why the fuck is that an issue? It's just... I just really hate feminists and feminism as it presents itself in a modern day. I remember being 15, 16... and watching the likes of Sargon of Akkad and all these reactionary channels, always shitting on feminists. And yeah, the stuff they came away with was bad back then, but it's even worse now because it's just, they've got nothing really to justify their position, to justify their political stance and their rhetoric and whatever it may be, their policies and all that bullshit. They just point to disparities. What the fuck skin is it off your nose whether or not girls take physics and other STEM subjects at universities and colleges. I don't hear you complaining about the fact that more women go to colleges and universities as opposed to men. Don't hear them complain about that, do you? No, of course you don't.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, again, Emma Harper also raises a very, very important point. As I pointed out in my last answer, this is something that is really very much at the heart of the STEM strategy, which the government has in place, because we know we need to tackle gender inequality.
Oh, we need to tackle gender inequality right across the education and learning landscape. Oh, is that right? Is that right? So how are you going to do that? What do they mean, of course? You know, sounds great, gender inequality. Same as the previous video, you know, racial inequality. And what that means is representation and power and all that shit. Eradicating disparities, quality of outcome. But in the case of gender inequality, wow, we need to eradicate the so-called misogynistic views, the outdated stereotypes. You know, we need to coerce the little girls to get active in sports that are predominantly dominated by boys. Encourage the girls to play with Lego and football and get dirty and muddy, you know, and tell the little boys it's okay if they want to play with Barbie and dolls and prams. And we can't use colours to associate them with. Blue and pink, nope, can't do things like that. No. Because essentially it's all about empowering little girls with their feminist bullshit, prioritising girls from as young as nursery if they have their way, which in many instances they do. I have a video on my channel, Feminist Inspired Nurseries. And it all comes at the expense of boys, essentially. With a feminist or feminised education system that is geared towards benefiting girls at every aspect of the fucking periphery of it, it affects boys. And you're seeing these outcomes now with boys, men, lads, whatever, dropping out of high school and college, uni, etc. And that's not just in Scotland, it's across the pond. Well, across the pond actually, but England, etc. as well. It's fucking, why the fuck is that an issue, STEM? Really? It's fucking remarkable. And yet after all this time, they still can't seem to quite close that gap. Funny that's, it's almost as if they're different, but we can't have that. No, because it destroys their worldview. That everything is created via social constructs.
Quality right across the education and learning landscape. She rightly points out, of course, that this is something that does impact on college and university as well. There is a perception around who...
Oh, there's damaging perceptions around who does what job. You know. Oh, yeah, I'm sure there's so many guys out there that just... They look at disgust in their face when they hear that Sally wants to become a physicist. I mean, come on. It's just bullshit, man. Again, what this really boils down to is the old sort of feminist rhetoric where they'll say that, you know, girls go into schools or they want to do things that are more care dominated, care orientated, whereas boys want to do things that are physical with their hands, etc. We need to change that. We need to change that. You know, it's that stereotypes that's doing that. Nothing to do with intrinsic differences. No, can't have that.
Who does what job, and therefore who does what course. That is, I think, is quite...
I'm sure people that are at the age that they are in colleges and universities are really dissuaded to pick certain subjects because of stereotypes. Oh, yeah.
Damaging, and women, of course, remain very underrepresented.
There it is, underrepresented. Absolute joke. I don't see them pushing for female tar layers, female labourers, female scaffolders, female oil rig workers. You don't hear that, do you? No. They just want girls to be coerced to go into specific sort of subjects and get interested in subjects that potentially could lead them to pretty decent careers in the future, you know. That's really what it boils down to. Or one aspect of it, anyway. There's probably people out there that are a lot more high on the IQ scale that could give you several other explanations as to why these people are obsessed with STEM in particular. But that's one of the reasons anyway.
Of many STEM sectors, so we will of course be keeping very up to date on that. And I give one example of the work that Education Scotland is doing in its Improving Gender Balance and Equality team.
Gender balance. Oh, God, it's just cancer. Fucking cancer, man.
Which tries to work with school clusters to ensure that more work can be done. But of course, we also do a lot of work in colleges and universities in this area as well, although universities are, of course, independent institutions from government.
Thank you. Question number 5, Jim Fairley.